While the most headline-grabbing Russian ships of the past couple of years have been the powerful little Buyan M missile corvettes, which, in spite of being less than 1,000 tons in displacement, are capable of launching long-range cruise missiles at ISIS targets and other threats to Russian national security, their larger cousins are still relatively obscure. However, while the Buyan M's will be an important component of the Black Sea Fleet as well as the Caspian Flotilla, the Burevestnik missile frigates will form the backbone of the Black Sea Fleet's surface combatant force for decades to come. The Burevestnik, or Project 11356, is derived from the Cold War-era Project 1135 anti-submarine frigates which were built in large numbers in the 1970s and the 80s. After the end of the Cold War, the design was modified for export to India, and in the last decade, after additional modifications, it was adapted by the Russian Navy, which ordered 6 vessels for the Black Sea Fleet under Yantar shipyard in Kaliningrad. Additional 3 ships of this class are being planned for the Pacific Fleet in the more remote future. The first 2 ships of the class, Admiral Grigovich and Admiral Essen, have entered service in March and April 2016, respectively. The third, Admiral Makarov, is undergoing factory tests and will likely enter service by the end of the year, while the remaining 3 ships, Admiral Butakov, Admiral Istomin and Admiral Kornilov, have been delayed by Ukraine's refusal to deliver gas turbine engines from the Zoryamash plant in Nikolaev. While Russian firms will be eventually able to produce the required engines themselves or provide the ships by different ones, unless the relations with Ukraine improve in the foreseeable future, the last 3 ships will be delayed by at least a couple of years. Nevertheless, even the 3 frigates that will be in service by the end of 2016 represent a potent surface force and a major modernization of the Black Sea Fleet. These are ships with a very balanced design, having anti-ship, anti-land, anti-air and anti-submarine capabilities in equal measure. Like the Buyan M's, each frigate carries 8 UKSK launch cells for Kaliber and Onyx anti-ship and cruise missiles, with the Kaliber family also including an anti-submarine torpedo-carrying missile. Air defense is provided by the medium-range Still 1 system, a naval version of the Buk M with 36 ready-to-launch missiles in vertical cells. For anti-submarine combat, the ship carries an anti-submarine helicopter, 533mm torpedoes, and anti-submarine depth charges that also serve as its anti-torpedo active defense. These frigates, as well as 6 of the more powerful Project 22350 frigates under construction for the Northern Fleet, will provide the medium surface ships for the Russian naval task forces, bridging the gap between the small missile corvettes and heavy missile cruisers and the aircraft carrier. Currently, that function is served by the aging Sovremeny and Udaloy destroyer classes built in the 1980s. While the frigates are only half the size of the older destroyers, they are far more capable than either of the destroyers. While the Sovremenys have a powerful anti-air and anti-ship armament, they lack anti-submarine weapons. Udaloys, on the other hand, are specialized anti-submarine ships with weak anti-ship capability and only short-range air defenses. The frigates also compare favorably to the contemporary European frigates and are vastly superior to the US littoral combat ships. They assure that should the Russian Navy be required to send a sizable naval task force to a remote part of the world for a lengthy deployment, it will have the necessary surface assets at its disposal.
Russian cruise missile strikes against ISIS targets carried out by a combination of air and naval assets drew attention to a relatively obscure component of the Russian armed forces, namely the Caspian Flotilla. While it is not a very large military force, its importance is much greater than numbers would suggest, as its mission cannot be accomplished by other forces of the Southern Military District. The core of the force are 2 Gepard light frigates, Tatarstan and Dagestan, 1 Molniya missile corvette, 3 Buyan gun corvettes, and 3 Buyan M missile corvettes supported by several smaller gunboats and minesweepers. Dagestan and 3 Buyan M's are the Caspian Flotilla's long arm, as each of the 4 ships carries 8 launch tubes for the Onyx and Caliber cruise missiles, which gives the ships the ability to strike targets 3,000 kilometers away. These 4 ships launched a total of 44 Caliber missiles against ISIS targets in Syria in 2 separate operations. 6 more Buyan M ships are to enter service with the Black Sea Fleet by 2018 to hold in check U.S. anti-ballistic missile installations in Romania, and since the 2 seas are connected by the Volga-Don Canal, permitting ships with drafts of up to 3.5 meters to travel between the seas, all 9 Buyan M ships with a total of 72 cruise missile launch tubes could be concentrated in either of the 2 seas if the situation requires. The Caspian Flotilla also has a ground component in the form of 2 naval infantry battalions supported by 8 small amphibious assault craft, capable of carrying 1 complete battalion in a single lift, which gives the flotilla an ability to deliver troops quickly to any point on the Caspian Sea's coastline, supported by the rapid-fire artillery and multiple rocket launchers of the frigates and corvettes. The one weakness of the flotilla is that its ships have weak air defenses and therefore would have to rely on Southern Military District land-based air defense and fighter cover. Nevertheless, it is easily the most powerful naval force in the Caspian, even when it is not reinforced by Black Sea Fleet units. While the cruise missile capability is what earned the flotilla its media exposure, it also carries out many other missions which are just as important. It protects the Caspian Sea pipelines and drilling installations against terror attacks and covert actions by unfriendly states, prevents piracy, smuggling, and illegal fishing operations. The presence of the Russian ships in the Caspian deters other countries from attempting to resolve disputes over drilling rights through violence and guarantees Russia the ability to maintain a maritime route to Iran, even in the face of opposition by other Caspian countries. The flotilla's pacifying presence is an important factor promoting Eurasian integration and preserving the security of the new Silk Road, and also a barrier against Turkey's attempts to establish its own sphere of influence in Central Asia. The final role of the Caspian Flotilla may become more important in the coming years, considering the recent increase in tensions between Russia and Turkey. 3 of the countries bordering the Caspian Sea, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, and Turkmenistan, are members of the Turkic Council and have sought military and technical assistance from Turkey and the United States. The Islamic State's activity in Afghanistan is on the rise, and ISIS international sponsors might decide to use it to destabilize post-Soviet Central Asian states in order to distract Russia from other global issues. The fact that the economics of Central Asian countries are being hurt by the drop in oil and natural gas prices make them susceptible to destabilization. All of these factors mean that the Caspian Flotilla will remain on the front lines of the current global hybrid war for years to come.
It's easy to forget, given that the Russian air group at Hmeimim was wholly composed of Sukhoi aircraft, including the Su-24, 25, 27, 30, 34, and 35, that the word MiG has been synonymous with fighter for most of the post-World War II era. MiG Design Bureau's dominance started with the famous MiG-15 fighter of the Korean War fame, through MiG-17, 19, and 21 of the Vietnam War, Arab-Israeli Wars, and the India-Pakistan conflicts, and ending with the MiG-23 that was the frontline Soviet fighter for most of the 1970s and 1980s, along with the MiG-25 strategic interceptor. The dominance of the MiG family was eclipsed and ultimately ended by the sudden emergence of the Sukhoi Design Bureau, which spent decades building attack, bomber, and strategic interceptor aircraft such as the Su-15, and whose introduction of the record-breaking Su-27 meant the MiG suddenly became the junior partner in the Su-27 MiG-29 combination of fourth-generation fighters which entered service in the 1980s. The end of the USSR tilted the playing field even more in favor of the Su-27. It was not efficient to modernize and maintain 2 fighters with similar characteristics, so preference was given to the larger, longer-ranged aircraft capable of carrying a greater payload. While MiG-29s experienced some modernization, the Su-27 family was enlarged by the Su-30 SM long-range multi-role interceptor, the Su-34 tactical bomber, and finally the Su-35 Generation 4+ fighter, all of which were accepted into active service and ordered in large numbers. Moreover, older Su-27s were modernized to the Su-27 SM Generation 4+ level in order to keep them competitive in the air combat role. And of course, the T-50 Generation 5 fighter is also a Sukhoi design that will receive its Su designation once it is officially accepted into service. Today, 2 decades of MiG neglect are coming to an end. Already in the 1990s, a few dozen of the MiG-29 SMT Generation 4+ fighters entered service. These aircraft had improved avionics, a more powerful engine, extra fuel, and a wide armament suite, which makes it equally capable in both air-to-air and air-to-ground roles. Additionally, MiG-29 SMTs were recently ordered and have begun to enter service, with the first 4 new aircraft being deployed to the Russian airbase in Armenia to keep watch on the potential Turkish threat. Russian naval aviation has ordered sufficient MiG-29Ks to equip an entire carrier-based fighter regiment to supplement the Su-33 regiment that represents the Admiral Kutuzinov's aerial component. But the MiG-29 family's ultimate member will be the MiG-35 fighter, which was originally developed for export, but which is soon expected to enter service with the Russian Aerospace Forces in 2017. Like the larger Su-35, the MiG-35 will be a Generation 4++ multi-role fighter equipped with an active phase radar array and a wide range of weapons. The renewed interest in MiG fighters serves several interests. The Sukhoi aircraft are all large, powerful, long-ranged aircraft, so much so that they are overkill in many situations, including close air support and providing battlefield air cover. Their presence would release the Sukhois for longer-range missions where their performance is crucial. The MiG-35 is also more than a match for most of the F-16 variants, which represent the bulk of NATO's fighter force and will continue to do so for decades to come. So they provide a useful boost to Russia's tactical aircraft numbers at lower operating costs than the Sukhois. The final reason has to do with Russia's defense industry policy that seeks to avoid excessive consolidation. The problems associated with the F-22 and the F-35 are a direct consequence of Lockheed Martin having a de facto monopoly on fighter design in the United States. The JFX competition that led to the F-35 was a sham for which the Boeing design was not developed to win, but rather to hone technologies to be used in Boeing's own monopoly, namely unmanned combat aerial vehicles. Therefore, the US Air Force now has no choice but to pay the many excessive billions of dollars Lockheed Martin demands and accept a substandard product because it literally has no alternative choice. The Russian Aerospace Forces, on the other hand, will have two major design bureaus to choose from in the years to come, and there are already rumors that the MiG-35 will be followed by a lightweight Generation 5 fighter to supplement the heavyweight T-50.